All right, good afternoon. In a short while, we will be joined by our colleague Hamza Malik, the Director of Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division at ESCAP, which is, as you know, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, which is based in Bangkok. He will be here to join us to launch ESCAP's 2026 flagship report, Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific. I have an announcement on behalf of our colleague Lenice Collins and the Office of the PGA that a reminder, two key events taking place this week. On Tuesday and Wednesday, candidates for the position of Secretary General will take part in interactive dialogues in which they will outline their vision for the UN and answer questions from member states and civil society. The interactive dialogues will start with Michelle Bachelet from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and Rafael Grossi from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. That will be on Tuesday. It'll be in the Trusteeship Council and on Web TV. And on Wednesday, we'll have Rebecca Greenspan from 10 to 1 p.m. and Macky Sall from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And these dialogues will be chaired by the President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock. And she's expected to also deliver, to speak to you at the stakeout outside of the General Assembly at 9:45 a.m. tomorrow. Some candidates, I'm told, will participate in media stakeouts shortly following their session. So more information from the PGA. And as you, of course, all know, the Financing for Development Forum starting off this week, and it is the opening of the Financing for Development Week, and that's one of the reasons our ESCAP colleagues are here. The Financing for Development Week will feature several events, including high-level meetings with Bretton Woods institutions tomorrow and the SDG Investment Fair from the 21st to the 23rd of April. All of these events will be live streamed on UN Web TV. And this morning, the Secretary General addressed the opening session of that event at ECOSOC, which is the first major gathering on this topic since member states adopted the Sevilla commitments last year. He told participants that the task before us is steep. The financing gap to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals now stand at over $4 trillion annually, and it is growing fast. Mr. Guterres says it is up to us to keep pushing to translate the promises made in Sevilla into concrete progress for people and country that need it most. He highlighted three broad areas of focus to bring them to life. First, the Secretary General said it's time to rev up the machinery of finance by increasing the assets housed in multilateral development banks and by combining public and private finance in new and expanded ways to support development. Also by mobilizing domestic resources and channeling them to areas of greatest need, including tackling illicit financial flows. Finally, Mr. Guterres renewed his call to reform the international financial architecture. Global economic governance must become more inclusive, more representative, more equitable, and more effective, he said. The full remarks were shared with you. Also speaking at the forum today is our Deputy Secretary General, Mina Mohammed, presenting the 2026 Financing for Sustainable Development report. And as we speak, or maybe he probably just finished, the Secretary General spoke at the opening of the 25th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and he's telling his audience that Indigenous peoples are bearers of culture, of knowledge, and ways of life that have sustained humanity for thousands of years, and that their participation in global decision-making has never been more critical. The Secretary General's speech lays out four priorities. First, that all member states must honor their commitments under the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Second, that the UN system and member states must ensure the full, meaningful, and direct participation of Indigenous peoples at all levels, supported by adequate and sustainable financing. And third, that societies everywhere must take immediate and concrete steps to protect Indigenous peoples, their leaders, and human rights defenders, and to address violence and the risk they face. And last, that we must all work to ensure that Indigenous women and girls can participate meaningfully in decisions that impact their lives. This year's theme focuses on ensuring health of Indigenous peoples, including in the context of conflict. highlighting the interconnectedness of health with indigenous territories, cultures, and ecosystems, as well as the impact of climate change. Those remarks were shared with you. Turning to the Middle East, you will have seen the tragic news on Saturday from our colleagues at the UN Peacekeeping Force in Lebanon. The Secretary General, in a statement we released, strongly condemned the attack on UNIFIL, in which one French peacekeeper serving with the mission was killed and 3 others were wounded, 2 of them seriously. According to initial assessment from UNIFIL, the peacekeepers came under fire from non-state actors, presumed to be Hezbollah, while investigating a location where suspected improvised explosive devices had reportedly been placed on a road between 2 positions in the UNIFIL area of operations in southern Lebanon. The 39-year-old staff sergeant named Florian Montorio leaves behind a partner and 2 daughters. We extend our deepest condolences to the staff sergeant's loved ones, the government of France, and his colleagues at the 17th Parachute Engineering Regiment based in Montauban in the south of France. Paying homage to his courage at a ceremony in Beirut yesterday, the head of mission and force commander, General Diadato Abanyara, said that the Florian service does not end here. It lives on what we do next as soldiers and peacekeepers. Meanwhile, UNIFIL reports that 2 peacekeepers who were severely injured in the same incident are being treated in Beirut and are in stable condition. A 3rd soldier was moderately injured and is now back at base. We wish them all a very swift recovery. Meanwhile, on the ground, the situation continues to be fragile. UNIFIL peacekeepers continue to observe Israeli Defense Force artillery fire and demolitions at several locations in southern Lebanon. We urge all parties to exercise maximum restraint and fully respect the ceasefire. Our peacekeepers also continue to face restrictions on their freedom of movement. This has had an impact on our efforts to resupply our positions along the Blue Line. We urge all sides to facilitate unhindered movements of UN peacekeeping convoys. Our humanitarian colleagues, for their part, report that a 10-day cessation of hostilities announced on April 16th has prompted some people to return to their communities as they assess whether it is actually safe to return. Authorities continue to advise displaced people against returning as the situation on the ground remains fragile. While the temporary pause in hostilities offers relief, it falls short of the sustained ceasefire needed to protect civilians, particularly children who've endured weeks of intense violence and displacement. And as an illustration of that, the Lebanese authorities are saying that since March 2nd, at least 177 children have been killed and more than 700 injured. In addition, more than 350,000 have been displaced, with many sheltering in overcrowded conditions with limited access to basic services. We continue to do everything we can to support those who need assistance. Since March 2nd, we and our humanitarian partners have provided more than 5.7 million meals, along with shelter items and hygiene items. Our partners also delivered 3.5 liters of bottled water and 30,000 cubic meters of water through water trucking, and supplied more than 660,000 liters of fuel to sustain critical water services for more than 500,000 people, and over 330,000 people have received emergency cash assistance. As we've been reporting, humanitarian response continued to be outpaced by the scale of the needs on the ground in Lebanon. The $308 million flash appeal launched mid-March to reach 1 million people over 3 months has so far received only $94 million, or 30% of what is actually required. We urge all donors to give, and to give cash, and to do it quickly. Turning to Gaza, you may have seen there was a joint report issued by the United Nations and the European Union that was released today, which is a final damage and needs assessment for Gaza. That was also, the World Bank also participated in that report. The report shows that recovery and reconstruction needs in Gaza are estimated to cost $71.4 billion over the next 10 years. That would include $26.3 billion required in the first 18 months to restore essential services, rebuild critical infrastructure, and support economic recovery in Gaza. Physical infrastructure damages are estimated at $35.2 billion United States dollars, with economic and social damages estimated at some $22.7 billion. The report says that more than 371,000 housing units have been destroyed or damaged, while more than half of Gaza's hospitals are non-functional. Nearly all schools are destroyed or damaged, and the economy in Gaza has contracted by 84%. In a press release, the European Union and us outline the enabling conditions required to implement Security Council Resolution 2803 effectively. That includes a sustained ceasefire, adequate security, and unimpeded humanitarian access in the immediate restoration of essential services. Also critical is the free movement of people and goods and reconstruction materials within and between Gaza and the West Bank, as well as functional and transparent financial system. More information online. Just to give you an update that Jean Arnaud, the Secretary General's personal envoy, is visiting Egypt. He looks forward to discussions about Egypt's perspective on the ongoing conflict, as well as regional efforts to assist the Islamic Republic of Iran and the U.S. in reaching a settlement. He will also seek to gain a deeper understanding of the broader economic and humanitarian consequences of the conflict. Mr. Arnaud, in his meetings, will reiterate the Secretary General's commitment to supporting all efforts aimed at achieving a comprehensive and durable settlement. Going back to the occupied Palestinian territory, our OCHA colleagues warn that Gaza remains unsafe for civilians, including aid workers and other personnel providing life-saving services. In a statement issued over the weekend, we and our humanitarian partners condemned the killing on Friday of 2 civilian contractors who were delivering water on behalf of UNICEF. They apparently were killed by Israeli fire at a filling point in northern Gaza. The humanitarian country team, which brings together the head of UN agencies and non-governmental organizations working in the OPT, said such attacks not only cost lives, but also disrupt critical services. We call on all parties to ensure the safety of civilians and humanitarian operations in line with international humanitarian law. Meanwhile, an NGO consortium focusing on protection in the West Bank, led by the Norwegian Refugee Council, said in a new report that Israeli settlers are subjecting Palestinians to sexualized harassment, assault, and intimidation, even in their own homes. Men and boys report being forced to strip and that they are being humiliated and subjected to degrading treatment. The report says more than 70% of displaced households surveyed cited threats against women and children, particularly sexualized violence, as a decisive factor in their decision to flee. To give you some context, in 2026, more than 2,500 Palestinians, including over 1,100 children, have been displaced across the West Bank. That's what OCHA is telling us. 75% of those displacements are being linked to settler attack and access restrictions. This afternoon, the Security Council will hold an open meeting on Ukraine. The Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas, and Asia, and the Pacific, Khaled Kyari, will brief on behalf of the Secretariat. Also briefing on the humanitarian situation will be the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Operations, Joyce Masuya. Mr. Kyari is expected to highlight the human cost of the ongoing hostilities and reiterate the Secretary General's call for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire and for a just and lasting and comprehensive peace in Ukraine in line with the Charter, international law, and relevant UN resolutions. And just to flag some development from Haiti, some positive note for once. The Secretary General welcomes the renewed dialogue and cooperation efforts between the Dominican Republic and Haiti, including the 17th April joint declaration and the decision by both to partially reopen their airspace. The United Nations supports the Dominican Republic and Haiti in their efforts to strengthen dialogue and build trust among the two nations. According to the information that we've received, the Dominican Republic will reopen its airspace to Haiti, restoring flights between Santo Domingo and Cape Haitian. That will be starting next month. We expect the reopening of the air corridor to help aid agency move staff and supplies into northern Haiti. And also positive development from the Congo, where our peacekeeping mission there, MONUSCO, welcomes the signing of a protocol on humanitarian access and judicial protection by the Congolese armed forces and the AFC M23 movement. Our colleague said this is an important step towards rapid, safe, and sustained humanitarian access. Over the past week, both parties held talks hosted by Switzerland and Montreux within the framework of the Doha process. The talks were facilitated by Qatar, the US, the African Union, with the UN peacekeeping mission present as an observer at these talks. The government of the DRC and the AFCM23 also signed a memorandum of understanding with the International Conference on the Great Lakes region that enables the operationalization of the expanded verification mechanism. Plus, in line with the mandate, the mission stands ready to support the initial verification mission of the ceasefire oversight and verification mechanism in support of the ongoing peace process in the East. The mission, however, reiterates that ceasefire monitoring requires conditions to be in place to ensure that effective mechanism can operate in a credible, safe, and effective manner. The mission also encourages the parties to maintain momentum and continue negotiations for the benefit of civilian population affected in the conflict, and we regularly update you on that tremendous burden that is carried by civilians in that area. Two exhibits to flag today. Permanent Mission of Denmark, Liberia, the Netherlands, and the UK, in partnership with UNHCR, launching the photo exhibit entitled Faces of Sudan, Women in War, and that will take place in the delegates' entrance. The opening today as well as the World Food Program, Innovation Rooted in Humanity. That exhibit is hosted by the Permanent Mission of Russia and Mali in the visitors' lobby. The exhibit highlights the role of human-centered innovation in advancing sustainable development and global food security. We have a language day today. If I say Ni Hao Mao, what language day is it?
Chinese.
Very good. Shay Shay. Today is Chinese Language Day at the UN. The day celebrates multilingualism and cultural diversity, and also promotes the equal use of all 6 official languages throughout this organization. So we say ni hao to our Chinese-speaking friends. Quiz today. Chris, you listening? This is an interesting one. This country occupies a landmass of only 702 square kilometers, but however, it is dispersed across an ocean expanse of nearly 3 million square kilometers. Nope. No, a landmass of only 702 kilometers. Nope. No? Oh, come on. Big country with a small name? Micronesia. Get it? All right, so we thank our friends in Palikir for their full payment to the regular budget. They are bringing us up to 101. Edith, letter.
Thank you, Steph. Can you give us an update on the possibility of getting food and fertilizer through the Strait of Hormuz, as the Secretary General had been pushing for, especially in light of the latest attacks?
I can tell you that Jorge Moura de Silva from UNOPS, working with our colleagues at UNCTAD and the IMO and the International Chamber of Commerce, is continuing his discussions, continue to push for such a mechanism to be put in place.
And also you gave us all of these dire figures of the amounts of money needed for the reconstruction of Gaza. What's the next step?
Well, we have a pretty good picture of what it will cost. Obviously, one will need funding, but more importantly, one needs the conditions on the ground, both humanitarian and security conditions, for this reconstruction to happen. And I don't think we're there yet. Amélie, and then Yvonne, then Namo, and then Stephanie.
Thanks, Steph. Rosemary Di Carlo met yesterday in Turkey at the diplomatic forum, the Turkish Cypriot leader, And there are pictures on the social media showing on the table between them the UN flag, but also the northern Cyprus flag. Is there any change in the UN policy on that?
No, I mean, Ms. DiCarlo was indeed at the Anatolia Diplomacy Forum. I think the picture that has been seen reflects the setup at the meeting venue. Let's be clear, does not signify any change in the UN's position on the Cyprus issue. Our position remains guided by the relevant Security Council resolutions, and the UN continues to support efforts towards a comprehensive and sustainable settlement on the island within the established framework. Yvonne, then Namo.
Thanks, Steph. Just to follow up really on Edie's question with regard to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, what are the latest projections that you've seen on the impact of that, especially on global hunger?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 10% or 10 to 12% of the world's fertilizer supplies are blocked, right? We've seen a hike in the price of fertilizer, in the price of urea. We have seen, obviously, not only a rise in the price of oil, but a rise in the price of oil without any sort of stability. All of that is having an impact on, first of all, on UN agencies, on their capacity to plan, on their capacity to buy. Namo.
On the Strait of Hormuz, the United States seems to have taken measures to enforce what they call a naval blockade on Iranian-flagged ships after seizing an Iranian-flagged vessel yesterday. What is the Secretary General's view of this so-called naval blockade by the United States?
Look, we've seen a lot of activity and, frankly, a lot of confusion about the status of the Strait of Hormuz. What is clear for us is that the Secretary General continues to be concerned by the restrictions that are put in place, as well as the maritime incidents that we've seen over the last 48 hours. Our position remains clear that we need to see full restoration of international navigational rights and freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, and that needs to be respected by all parties. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. The President of the United States yesterday wrote, "We are offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran." The ambassador of the United States at the UN was asked yesterday if doing that was going against international law. And his answer was basically that it's known that Iran hides weapons and military equipment in this, energy plants and so on. So does the UN have any information if this is true? And second of all, what the Secretary General think about what President of the United States
we have, whether it's true or not, we have the same information that you have, Stefano. No one ever shares battle plans with us. What I can tell you, and I will read what we've said already in the past, that there is no military objective that justifies the wholesale destruction of civilian infrastructure or the deliberate infliction of pain on a civilian population. Celia de la Varenne, then Linda.
Steph, going back to Haiti, are you aware that Kenyan troops abuse and rape young girls, some of them as young as 12? And if so, what is the UN can do about it?
Yes, we've received number of 4 allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse involving personnel from the multinational support force in Haiti, which, as you know, but it bears saying, yeah, these are not UN peacekeepers, they are not UN staff. Regardless of that, the UN Human Rights Office monitors documents and follows up on allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse, even involving non-UN forces operating under a Security Council mandate. And the allegation against those troops were investigated by a human rights colleague, which share their findings and recommendations for action, including for accountability, support for victims, and prevention with the multinational security support force and all relevant states. And it is important that every single allegation be fully investigated by the national authorities of the soldiers, of the soldiers that are, by the country whose soldiers are operating, and that people be held to account. Linda, and then Pan.
Thank you, Steph. Apropos of the financial crisis, the SG is asking that, I guess he's asking the General Assembly to temporarily suspend the return of unspent dues to members. And I get for 2026, I think something like $300 million was sent back to members in the midst of all these arrears. Has there been any progress on this? What's holding up the GA from making this?
It's a very valid question. Talk to the member states who vote in the GA. The Secretary General doesn't have a vote, and he's been very clear on the need to do away with this rule, which doesn't make sense to us, and frankly puts us in this kind of spiral, death spiral of financial survivability.
So, but who? This is in the charter, or is this the General
No,
Assembly
it's a
rule?
financial rule put in place by member states. So it would have to be revoked by the Fifth Committee and the General Assembly.
Okay, thank you.
Pan.
Thank you, Steph. Going back to the Chinese Language Day, can you provide some figures as to how many members in the UN system can speak the language, and how many are taking courses in the language?
I can find out. I do not know. I don't think we keep track of what languages. I mean, some people declare what language they speak, others don't. I don't know if we have a rough number of how many people actually speak Chinese, French, or even English in this organization, not to mention Russian and Spanish.
Okay, so does the SG have any
Everybody
message?
speaks UNese.
Okay, thank you. Does the SG have any message for the Chinese language speakers and the learners? Thank you.
Well, I think we always want to encourage people learning new languages, because learning a new language helps you learn and understand a new culture. Okay, Benny, and then we'll close it off.
As the Secretary General noted, this is the third incident in which UNIFIL suffered casualties. Is it worth it to keep peacekeepers undefended in a battlefield? What exactly is their mission there?
Well, their mission is outlined word for word in the mandate of the Security Council, which you know well, and I'm sure you've read extensively, Benny. The safety and security of the peacekeepers is being assessed regularly and daily. They are fulfilling their mandate. They will continue to do so. They're also helping protect civilians. The safety and security of peacekeepers can be assured if the parties involved in this conflict decide to stop targeting them and attacking them. On that note,
I understand
yeah.
that, Steph, but please, I need to follow up on this. If the UNIFIL has done its job so well, why is it that its mission was not extended by the Security Council?
Well, that is a question you need to ask Security Council members.
It's a vote of no confidence, in other words, isn't it?
That is your interpretation. I can tell you that the Secretary General has full confidence and indeed admiration for the work that UNIFIL has been doing on the ground.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go to, one more question, then we'll go to our guest.
Thank you, Steph. My name is Jerry Kao of the Chinese China Central Television. I also have a question about the Chinese Language Day. With AI translation improving quickly, Is the UN planning to use them to expand its multilingual work, including Chinese and other non-English official languages?
Well, we're already using various technologies. We're also already able to expand the amount of work we produce in non-official languages. If you look at the colleagues at our UN Youth Center, they do it in Hindi. They do it in Kenya, Rwanda. There's also work being done in German, to mention just three. But other languages are being used. The more we can expand our products in different languages, the better it is. Okay.